Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, saying you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. If you want to touch base with me, two best ways is either through the Dr. Vibe Show website, via drvibeshow show.com, and also at drvibe show on Twitter. And as always, you can always check me out also at the Good Men Project, where I host the only online program featured on a regular basis. You can also catch me so many different other places, but I'm just going to be cool and easy tonight. So we have another friend of the show that's on tonight. It's W. Brendan Whithead, and he has written a really great article, and he asked me before we came on the show, how did you find out about that article? I looked around and I read it, saw it, and I thought it was a great article for us to share and have a conversation about. The name of the article is "The Black Athlete as Activist, Tipping on a Tightrope." You can find it at ebony.com, which is the online site of Ebony Magazine. He is a JD. He's received a JD and sports certificate from Tulane University. He's a sports radio host for the Sports Shop on 620 AM, 93.3 FM, and 96.5, in addition to his weekly podcast on iTunes. He is also the co-editor of Cat Crave. I love that name, Cat Crave, and has had his writing featured at the very popular websites, verysmartbrothers.com, and also Ebony Magazine, ebony.com. So he's here to share a little bit about himself, share a bit about the article, and also Black Athletes in Sports. So welcome, Brendan, to our show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. I've told you before, I'm a fan of the show. I've seen it before, and I just like the entire feel of it. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, you know what? Just relax, kick your feet up verbally, mentally, emotionally, and just enjoy the ride. So, like we always like to do on most occasions on the show, share a little bit of background about yourself. We know where you are now, but where you came from.
Fortunate enough to go to the Mecca, Howard University, and
Good man.
went from yeah, Bison. You can always tell a Bison man, you just can't tell him very much. So fortunate enough to go there. Like you mentioned, went to Tulane to get my JD, and I've actually had a lot of fun. I kind of fell into the entire sports media thing just kind of on a whim. I met my co-host at the Sports Shop at a rally for President Obama, and we got to clicking and we got to talking. I actually started off as a researcher for the show, and since then become a co-host. Started with the podcast, and most recently started with the writing. So I'm trying to get my way out through the entire thing, but I've really enjoyed this whole process. But enjoying the journey, I'm absolutely doing that.
Excellent. That's very good stuff. But I'm not going to let you get away with that. I want to go further back. You know, where were you born? How was
Okay,
growing
well,
up? And what was sports always something from you in your life at an early age?
played some basketball growing up. Like I said, I'm from Raleigh, so if you're from Raleigh and you don't play basketball, I really can't trust you. Like it's just it's ingrained in you. It's everything. College basketball, you got Duke, you got UNC, you got State, all within very close driving distance. Sports has always been a really big thing for my family. Not just, an older brother and a father, but my mother was even in sports. Like we were just a sports family, and some of the earliest memories are of Michael Jordan and him performing at the height, really the height of his powers. Those are some of the first memories of basketball that I got, and just always being just piled around the TV, regardless of what kind of the sporting event was. If it was boxing, basketball, football, baseball, we were just there always watching, and I think I associated that with family more than anything else. And so I think that's part of the reason that it drove. And I appreciate, I like the meritocracy of it all. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times in your everyday walk of life, you're not going to walk up and say, oh, yeah, I'm better than you. Or you really shouldn't if you can. But in sports, it's not frowned upon at all. Like you can just go ahead and go get it. And I love the part about sports, the fact that it's just, we're gonna get up on this court, and it doesn't matter how cool you are, it doesn't matter how weird you are on play. If I beat you, I'm better than you. I like the simplicity of that. It's very cool to me.
Excellent. So you enjoyed sports a lot when you were younger. Was it something at a young age when you were younger? Did you want to pursue a career in sports?
Oh yeah, everybody wanted to be like Mike. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that was every kid's dream. I mean, but as you get older, you realize that you're like, yeah, I'm not going to anybody's professional leagues. But I still did love it, and I still have an affinity for it even to this day. And it's something that it was something wasn't going to shake. You know, and then even in law school, I interned for the men's basketball program. It's just always been something, always been with me, and I just know it's not going anywhere. It's just one of those things that I'm in love with. You know, it's just something that everybody has to deal with. Like, oh, there's Brendan. He's got his head in some book about sports, or he's watching some sporting event just because that's kind of always how it was with me. So I've always really enjoyed the competition. I'm a competitive guy anyway, so I've always enjoyed that portion of it, and I'm never gonna be able to shake this bug. I know that now.
Okay, good stuff. Was it a difficult decision for you to say, you know what, I'm only going to be able to do so much playing sports and to transition into another area of the world of sports?
I was always very pretty keenly aware of what the odds were. My parents were both in education. My father worked for the Department of Public Instruction for 20 years with early childhood development. My mother was a professor at North Carolina Central University. So education was always out front and foremost, and so it was never really the idea of going professional. I was just very cognizant of, okay, here are the odds of you actually going professional. Yeah, you can play a little ball, but everybody can play a little ball, and maybe don't get caught up on that. Just know that you enjoy it, know that you love it, and then whatever comes out of it, that's what comes out of it. I was actually trying to get into shape to walk on to Howard's basketball team when I tore my knee up, and that kind of it changed my thinking about what I wanted to do in sports. I had never really kind of thought after college like what I would be interested in doing, and it allowed me to kind of think about, well, maybe I'd want to be, at that time I think I made the decision, well, maybe I want to be an agent, or maybe I want to be on another side or another aspect of sports. So that was pretty big, and actually, if we're talking about current events, the passing of Stuart Scott, I think having him as a sports anchor growing up was really, really big, because it does kind of open your eyes to the other businesses and other avenues that you can go into sports and still be surrounded by something that you love. And having him there, bringing his own brand of what he was, and kind of sounding a lot like I sounded like when I talked to my friends about sports. I think that was really, really big, having somebody that you can look at tangibly and say, hey, he looks like me, he sounds like me, and he's really being himself, and he can still be in this world. It kind of makes it more real, as opposed to just, okay, yeah, Michael Jordan is great, but I'm not 6'5", I don't have a 40-inch burst. So that was really cool.
You mentioned Howard University, and actually now that's something that you and I have in common. My father attended Howard University, so we have something in common right off the bat. Why did you choose to go to Howard?
Hampton, and my father went to North Carolina A&T. So I had grown up in the HBCU experience. My brother also went to Hampton, so I always loved the HBCU experience. I thought there was something special, very intangible that, even today I can't really explain to you, but there's something about going to a school and just being a student. There's a lot of times, especially in high school, you'll look around, if you're in AP classes like as I was, you'll look around and there aren't many people that look like you. And I think it's just important to go to a school, especially in college, where you can just look around and be like, you know what, I'm not a smart black guy, I'm not this guy, I'm Brendan. And I think that helps in terms of development of a person. And that was if I was going to go to HBCU, I might as well go to one anyway. So I had to go to Howard.
Okay. How was the Howard experience?
I had the best 4 years, I mean, that you could ever ask for. I met some lifelong friends that I really can't imagine my life without. And it was DC, which was very very different from Raleigh. Raleigh's not a small town by any means, but it's not DC. So that was a very important and important for me to kind of grow up. I was close to home, but not right down the street, so it didn't feel like I was at a weight camp, or it didn't feel like I was pretty much like at high school. It was a real college experience, but I was still close enough to come home for a Thanksgiving break and to have it not be a big issue. Howard was it helped me grow a lot, not only as a student and intellectually, and motivated me and build to Tulane, but it also helped me grow as a man. And I could have picked a better institution for myself.
Excellent. So after you graduated from Howard, what was your next move?
That's when I went to Tulane. At the time when I went to Tulane, I thought I wanted to be a sports agent. The more I kind of spoke with sports agents, the more I kind of found out about exactly what that was. Because yeah, you can read about what it's supposed to be, and you can kind of try to figure it out from that. But when you're getting real firsthand knowledge from people that have been in the industry several years about what it's like, that kind of lost some of its luster. It's there's kind of a seedy underside to being a sports agent. Not that all sports agents are bad people or anything like that, but you're chasing after talented young men, and that can be young men and women now, and it can be very very difficult, and that can some of the things that you might be asked to do or that might be necessary in order to become a better sports agent aren't really some of the things that I really wanted to be about. So that kind of changed my mind in terms of exactly what I wanted to do. But I'm very grateful that I got Tulane Law, and it changed my life. So
Excellent. So after graduating from Tulane, what was your next move?
wanted to come back for a bit after being at Howard and then going straight to New Orleans. I had been away from home for a little bit, and I kind of missed my family, to be completely honest with you. So I came back, and then like I said, I kind of just fell into this sports media thing. I've always, like I said, I've had the passion for sports, and just kind of two things kind of matched up. My acumen and my desires kind of all came together at that, and I've really, really enjoyed it. It's something that's very, very new to me, even still now, even though I've been, I guess, I started as a researcher a couple years ago now, but it still feels very, very new, and I'm still very excited to do it. Like every Saturday, I'm very excited to do the show. I just recorded a podcast yesterday, and I was excited to do that. So it's anything that I'm happy doing, and I can still be happy doing years later. I think there's something to be said for that.
Do you remember your first sports broadcast?
Oh man, yes, I do. It was about boxing. It was a short segment on the Sports Shop. It was 5 minutes on the state of boxing, and a lot of people, especially a lot of people my age, aren't really boxing fans anymore. It's kind of to be honest, the sport's kind of cannibalized itself with the kind of business decisions they made, with whether it be the multiple reigning bodies or the corruptness that kind of seeps through in the sport, or whether it's just too many weight classes for people to try to keep up with. There's a lot of stuff about boxing. So I try to bring my friends in to watch a match. I'm always watching matches at my house. So that was kind of the first time I was able to get on like a large scale and talk about a sport that I love very, very dearly. And I was so crazy nervous, and so it was just a lot of fun. My heart was racing, but it was I can very, very keenly remember, and it was quite an experience.
Nice. Very nice. So you said, I find this interesting, you said you sort of fell into sports media. Can you define what your falling in was all about? How did that happen? You just take a step and there it was? How did that happen?
Well, it was kind of one of those things where, so I was at a President Obama fundraiser. It was some local fundraiser for Democrats, and they had the debate, and then afterwards people were just kind of mulling around, and someone mentioned whatever was occurring at that particular moment. And I don't really talk to strangers like that, just as a general rule. But if you start talking about sports, well, I feel comfortable. Be like, yeah, sure, we can chat about sports. And I started talking to these guys. Now I didn't know who they were, and as we started talking more and more, they're starting to look at each other, and they're giving back to me, and we kind of have a certain amount of rhythm when we're talking to one another. So they tell me they have a show, and to come by one Saturday, and I wasn't doing anything that Saturday. So I was like, cool. So when I show up that Saturday, they had forgotten they had told me that. So I kind of showed up to there was a road show. Yeah, so I show up, and I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? And they're kind of looking at each other like, yeah, we did meet you. So they brought me in, and I was just kind of sitting down and watching them do this road show, and it was really, really cool. Just they brought in some guests, and just the kind of reactions they were getting from people. I thought that was very, very interesting. I had never really given sports media or being a part of sports media much consideration, even though like I said, I follow sports for the duration of my life, and it was so much fun. So I actually kind of broached the subject of being their researcher. They didn't have a researcher. It was a relatively new show. I think it was about eight months that they had started, and so they were still kind of finding their voice as well. And so I broached the subject. Hey, would you like a researcher? And they were like, well, you can show up, and that was kind of the start of it. I did some research stuff for the intern program that I was at with Tulane. And I just kind of kept sticking around. It was kind of like the puppy that just kind of kept coming around, and I enjoyed it, and they enjoyed having me, and eventually I worked my way up to being a co-host, which I've really, really enjoyed, and those guys have been really, really good to me.
Excellent. Well, certainly before we end our conversation, we'll get back to the show and more about it, but let's focus on this article that I think is quite an outstanding article. The Black Athlete as Activist, Tipping on a Tightrope. What made you write this article?
I'm very, very close with my father. He's an older gentleman. He's 68 now, and he talks in such reverential tones about the things that went on in his day. So he went to, like as I mentioned, he went to North Carolina A&T, but he went because of the Greensboro Four, because of the sit-in. So he was there when he was really a man. It was the 60s. And so he talks all the time about the civil rights struggle and what that was like. And he talked, as would happen with us when we talk about sports, he would talk about Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Jim Brown and Bill Russell, and how they banded together when Muhammad Ali was just refusing to be drafted into the Vietnam War. And he talked about that, talked about Carlos and Smith at the Olympics, and just the entire struggle and how important athletes were. And so I kind of look back at that in historical terms, and then I take a look at what's going on now, and I couldn't help but make the comparison. And that was surprising me, because I had never known that. Being 27, I had never known what it was like to have athletes kind of at the forefront of these conversations, whether it was the St. Louis Rams coming out as a unit with the hands up, don't shoot, or the I Can't Breathe shirt down, I think first by Derrick Rose. That's something that I wasn't familiar with. And it came back, because, yeah, sure, my father can talk. I had never experienced those things, and it just kind of it stirred something in me, because these guys now are icons, and with the amount of money they make, they can be larger than life, and they can sometimes seem to be larger than issues, and they can kind of float above these issues. And one of the big phrases that you'll ever hear when you're talking about athletes and activism, well, Republicans buy sneakers too, and that was Michael Jordan's quote when someone was speaking to him about, why hadn't he been more involved in local politics. I think it was Jesse Helms. Why hadn't he spoken out against Jesse Helms, a Republican senator from North Carolina? He's like, Republicans buy sneakers too. Like he just wasn't going to enter that fray. And honestly, I I got it, and I still get it. These guys are making so much money with endorsements. They don't want to make anybody upset or anything like that. I get that. That this is a very expensive decision that these guys are making, and there's no shortcut, and there's no way around that. They can very easily make their sponsors mad, make potential sponsors mad, because these guys are global brands. One of the first things that LeBron James said when he got into the league was that he wanted to be a global brand, that he wanted to be a billionaire. He's well on his way to doing that. But it's not easy taking a stand. And sure, you can make some small accommodations, some small statements here or there that everyone can get along with. But that's one thing. And again, it's things that where there is some real controversy, that's not an easy decision to make. So I definitely wanted to applaud them and just kind of put a spotlight on it.
Excellent. Ben, and I'm liking how you and your father communicate, and him telling you about the activism in the 60s and the 70s amongst black athletes. Looking at this article, why do you think it's not as prevalent as it was back in the 60s?
I think when there's a certain amount of disconnect that has happened between the black athlete and the rest of people. They make so much money that they're in this upper echelon of just higher class, and I think that while it's great for them, and I'm happy for them that so many young black men are able to become millionaires, able to become wealthy, and not only get themselves but get their families out of tough situations. It does kind of make it. There's a certain disconnect there because they're no longer that same sort of thing, and we don't necessarily go through the same struggles. We think that you arrived at a place where racism no longer exists, and we've heard that from some. Racism isn't really that prevalent anymore because they're dealing in a world that, quite frankly, most of us don't have any sort of experience with. I think that kind of money, because if you look back, while professional athletes were making good money back in the 60s and 70s, they were very much more tangible to the people that they were entertaining. Those people, there wasn't as much of a delta in terms of what they were making and their lifestyle as and where their audience was. Those are two completely different things. And I think that with the addition of money, it's kind of come at a price where some of them no longer feel the connection with regular Joe, be him black or white.
Absolutely. Well put. Definitely. In results of the past year, with the Garner incident, then Trayvon Martin incident, all these incidents, how do you feel about the black athletes? How many black athletes in the NBA wearing the "I Can't Breathe" shirts? Do you feel it's a good move, bad move, controversial move? What are your thoughts?
Yes. To answer your question, all of those things. I think it's a good move and controversial. Look, it's controversial because there are some people that, regardless of evidence or common sense, are going to believe certain things about Eric Garner or certain things about black men in general, that there's a certain threat to be had just by our mere presence. And so it will make so taking a stand, being pro-black or being pro-black man, lives matter, just those words, fueling that's scary for some people. So that it's always going to be controversial. It's a good look. I mentioned Derrick Rose earlier, so at least with the "I Can't Breathe" shirt, and I thought that was very poignant. And I thought it was a point for a couple reasons. One, because obviously it was a part of the movement, and it was on a national stage. I do believe that was an ESPN or a TNT game. That was a big stage for him to don that shirt. But also because of this, I thought that was a lot of self-awareness on Derrick Rose's part. Rose has previously kind of talked about or lamented he didn't really like to be in front of the camera, really speaking. That's not where he feels comfortable. And I thought that it was very self-aware of him to say, you know what, I have to get on the soapbox, I have to scream, put this shirt on, and that's going to say plenty for me. I thought that was an self-aware thing by a guy that's always been and always done what he felt was right, be it this or coming back from injury. He's always been his own man, and I've always appreciated that. I mentioned LeBron James and some other Cleveland Cavaliers players wearing it, and to that point, I think it can be bad. And for this reason, LeBron James, he wore the shirt, and then they played, and then afterwards, not surprisingly, he was asked about it by the media after the game, and he said it's not a black-white issue. It's just him wanting to support a father, or him wanting to support a family who had lost a father, rather. And while I appreciate him wearing the shirt, it kind of erases all the power behind it if you take it away from it being a black-white issue. No, this is very much a black-white issue, and for him to don it and then kind of, I don't want to say take a step back, but it kind of negated all of the things all of the goodwill to me that he had built up in regards to this particular issue. It kind of just threw that away. And so you're going to have, if you're going to take these stands as an athlete, as a prominent member of society in general, you have to be willing to take those stands. You got to be willing to take those arrows that are obviously going to come back at you. So I think that's going to be interesting as athletes become more aware, as athletes become more comfortable in front of a camera saying these things. They're going to have to pick a side. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where you can kind of mealy mouth your way through it. I don't think there's any tepid response that's going to be deemed all right. I think this is not one of those fence sitting issues. You're going to have to be left, or you're going to have to be right on it, and you're going to have to go with it from there.
Okay, good stuff. But let me ask, is this protest with the I Can't Breathe? Now, as I said, I'm not as much of a follower of the NBA as yourself. Is the protest still continuing, or are they still showing their support, or has it died down?
I think this is going to be a tough issue to figure out whether or not there's not going to be a winners losers sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like there was a certain feeling of accomplishment when President Barack Obama was elected president, because you knew tangibly he's going to be the president for at least the next 4 years. I don't think this is going to be a thing that's going to be won or lost after a course of a 5 or 6 year period. This is about black people being treated equally, and that's the same fight that's been going on forever as it pertains to African Americans in this country. So this isn't going to be something that's won or lost quickly. It might be through elections that some things are changed. It might just be through the way that we're able to speak to and talk to one another and talk to other races and come together. That's a big topic. It's such a big issue. I don't know if are people in the street the same numbers. Sure, I don't think that they are. That doesn't mean that the fight is stopped at all.
Okay. What do you feel that the black athlete, is it a responsibility of the black athlete to be an activist? Because you have people like a Michael Jordan, who's never, still recognized globally, has never really got involved or commented on black activism. Another gentleman, Tiger Woods, not involved. Do you feel that versus a person like, you get comments from Charles Barkley, who is an activist in his own way? We'll leave that definition on what he is. But do you feel that do you think it's a responsibility for the black athlete to be an activist in the professional arena?
I'm always loath to tell another grown-up what they be completely honest with you. I will say that you should feel a certain tinge to want to do something. I can't sit up here and tell anyone that, hey, this might cost you millions of dollars, but you should be doing it. But I would say that I would want to see that out of these black athletes. I want to see it. I think that if I were to have a son that were an athlete, which is obviously I don't have any choice, but if I were, then I would want to instill in him a certain sense of pride and say, no, there are certain things that are kind of bigger than you, that there were things that came before you and people that need you, that will come after you, they're going to need you to speak up. And I would implore them to do so.
Okay, good stuff.
You mentioned Charles Barkley.
Yeah, you did mention him in the article, and certainly if you want to speak about Charles and his thoughts, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I disagree with Charles. Charles paints with broad brush. Okay, he has little to no nuance, even when he's talking about basketball. But I think that he's important, and I disagree with him. I mean, he called the people in Ferguson, he called them all scumbags. No, he's not somebody I would ever go to for social commentary. I would never go to him for any commentary outside of basketball. However, I think that it's important that if I'm going to sit up here and ask people and ask athletes, hey, I want you to be more vocal, I want you to really be, then I have to be understanding of people that are going to say things that I don't like. I wouldn't. It would ring hollow if I was asking people and imploring people, hey, I want you to be. I want these athletes to be more upfront. I want to be on the front lines of these racial issues, but then completely upset that they said something that I don't agree with. I'm sure I say things that lots of people don't agree with. I think it's important that others, also the non-blacks, that they understand that black are not monolith any more than anyone else is. There are opinions, and you can go to a barbershop now, and I'm sure you'll find somebody that agrees with Charles Barkley. There are opinions that differ within our race, and I think it's important for people to understand that. I wouldn't want non-blacks to think that all blacks think one way or another. That's why I would be loath to speak for all blacks on any issue, because that's not even possible. So I think Charles Barkley, while I disagree with his message, I think it's important that people realize it's important to have multiple messages. In addition to the fact that his message prompted his co-host Kenny Smith to come out with his own letter, and he really, I thought he really fleshed out the issue really well in his open letter in response.
Very true. Very true. Well, I want to expand on the conversation and just get your thoughts on what is the state of the black athlete in America in professional sports as you see it. We're just starting a new year, 2015. Last year, there were some highlights and also not so highlights for the black athlete. Obviously, unfortunately, the media spent a lot of time on the not so positive images, such as a Ray Rice and an Adrian Peterson. What do you feel the state of the black athlete is in as we start 2015?
I'm actually really impressed by the black athlete, to be honest, and not the on court stuff or on field stuff. It's really, these guys are understanding exactly how powerful they are. I think that was it was one of the more interesting things that came out of the decision with LeBron James, where he decided, okay, I'm going to go to Miami. It really rankled people's feathers in a real way. I understood the Cleveland fans were upset that they lost their guy for a little bit. Okay, I understood their anger. But the overwhelming anger, like why was everybody so angry that he decided to leave? He was a free agent. It's in the CBA. You can leave if you're a free agent. But I think that the fact that he was not only able but willing to go on TV and have this 30-minute special on ESPN, and not only that, these people watched it, and they watched it because you wanted to know. So he not only knew his power, but he used it, and I think that really bothered people. So I think not only him, but you're seeing Kevin Durant. They understand their brand. They understand how big, how powerful they are, how many millions go into small decisions they make. There was an article that came out after the decision that talked about what the before and after LeBron James left the Cleveland area. I mean, these guys make huge decisions. They're really corporations unto themselves, and I think that there's a very real understanding of that. And so I appreciate that, because that's a real tangible issue, and it's a real idea that they seem to have gotten. So as it pertains to the negative stuff, I mean, look, black people aren't perfect. I mean, there are going to be people that make mistakes that are black, and that is what it is. They're human beings. It's interesting to see how the NFL responded in particular to the domestic violence situation as it pertained to Ray Rice. They really they made the decision that they were going to react off of what other people's reactions were. A lot of their kind of how they handled Ray Rice was outside of the purview of what they had been doing it pertains to the CBA disciplining players. They needed to make an example of him in particular, and it's he kind of caught the short end of the stick as it pertained to that, but he also put himself in that position. So that's unfortunate for him, but that's what happens.
Understood. Understood. With the why, and I want to highlight on this. You had mentioned that the black athlete is very powerful, etc. But then the ownership in many of these professional leagues do not reflect many people of color. How does that affect the black athlete in these times, in your opinion?
That's very interesting. I think that you're going to see more and more of that. You see Michael Jordan as a majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets, see Shaquille O'Neal as a minority owner of the Sacramento Kings. You're starting to see more and more. Well, you had Jay-Z as a very, very minority owner of the Nets. You're starting to see, though, athletes are more and more interested in things beyond their athleticism. You're starting to see players talk more and more about what they want to do after their career is done. I think that's really the most important thing. Whether or not they go into athletics or whatever, I think that's really, really the most important thing in terms of they understand that they're going to be an athlete for a finite period of time. However long that is, even a long career, they'll be done at 40, regardless of the sport, pretty much. So now what? What are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because that's a long time. Most people don't retire at 40, but that's what they're going to be doing. So I think that as long as they understand that they play a game, but that is not who they are. I think that that's one of the more difficult things for a lot of these guys to understand. You look at some of the bankruptcy rates and some of the problems that oftentimes come after the sports are done. And I think that has a lot to do with it. They're so wrapped up in calling themselves, well, I'm a football player, I'm a basketball player. Well, there's going to come a time when you are no longer that, and that can't be the sole identifier. So I think that has kind of been one of the things that's more recently happening. Guys are understanding. You're starting to see guys go into commentate, black athletes go into commentating or go into the executive positions for some of these teams. I think I think that the idea of, okay, I'm just going to be an athlete, just going to be an athlete, just going to be an athlete, I think that's kind of died down to, okay, so what am I going to do afterwards? We all saw the 30 for 30 broke. What are you planning to do after all this is said and done? I think that's really the most important thing, whether or not they go on to be owners in their professional leagues or not.
Okay. When you look at sports these days, do you view it differently than when you started to get into the sports arena commentating? Have your views on the sports and also the black athlete activism changed over the years?
A little bit, yeah, definitely. Especially in the way in language, I try to keep an eye on how people are referred, whether or not they're referred to as a thug or something like that. I think that a lot of times when commentators or even people are breaking down the athletes, they try to break them down as people, and I don't think that that's necessarily the best thing because you don't really know these people. I think to keep your commentary on the court or on the field of play, I think everything is fair game. But I think when you start trying to make wholesale assumptions about who they are as people, I think that can be a little bit much. And so I noticed that here and there with commentary and things like that. So I try to keep that in the back of my head. And then, just generally speaking in football, football is one of the more interesting sports because we've found more and more about what happens in life after football. In terms of the cognitive disorders that they face, the high rate of Alzheimer's and ALS and things like that. So those big hits that I used to really cheer and just really get me going, now I was a little bit more cringing. I'm a little bit more cognizant of those things. So especially in football, I do keep a wary eye on that. I'm not 100% sure that sport is really built for human beings. So that's a weird thing for a guy that loves the sport so much.
Let me ask, in your opinion, what sport out of the three major sports in the U.S. do you feel it's easiest for a black athlete to be an activist? Basketball, football, or baseball?
I would probably say basketball, and I say that mostly because in football, a lot of people don't even know what you look like. If you don't have your gear on or anything like that, it's really kind of even for a guy that follows it, pretty much religiously. I don't even know what a lot of these guys really look like. In basketball, it's a lot. You really have some sort of identification, like, oh, that's Kevin Durant, that's Russell Westbrook, that's Boogie Cousins. Like, you really kind of really know what these guys look like, and they're on a prominent stage on several nights a week. Baseball, there's just there's not a lot of black representation in baseball, and so I think that it's kind of and baseball in general has done a little bit in terms of its popularity. I think basketball is on the way, and basketball is a global sport, and you see these messages of support, be it with Ferguson or Eric Gardner, across the globe. And so, a basketball being an international sport and people streaming it online and watching it, I think that makes it a lot easier in order to spread if you have a message to spread. I think it makes it a lot easier.
Great. So, what are you looking at this when you're covering a sports story these days? Because you're on a number of different platforms. What are you looking for when you're covering sports and delivering to the audience? What hooks or what keys are you looking for to keep the audience engaged?
I still get excited about the sport, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I'm still enthralled with seeing these athletic performances, like the Odell Beckham Jr. catch. I was mouth agape, just sitting on my couch. I couldn't believe it. I still get the hairs on the back of my neck still stand up for stuff like that. I was watching Wake Forest, and they just played yesterday, yep. And just the energy in that arena. I mean, it was palpable. And that kind of stuff still gets to me, and I love the fact that it still gets to me. I've been watching college basketball for as long as I can remember. North Carolina, if there ain't nothing else we do basketball, and I love that, and that's still a thing to me. I love that the feeling of a crowd getting into it. Off court, I just really like to see them as people, that real life people. That really interests me, and so anything pertaining to that, like a thing that I'm kind of more recently talking about because I've had a chance to cover some games and go into some locker rooms, is the fact that I don't really love the fact that the media is allowed in the locker room at all. I think
why do you not like that?
It kind of treats them like cattle a little bit, because they're in various degrees of undress. They just shower. They've been playing for an hour or more, depending on the sport. I'd really appreciate it if we gave them some more time to settle and then come out. If you want to speak, I understand that there is a desire to hear them speak. For whatever reason, you really want to hear them speak after the game. You just watch them play their heart out for 2 hours, but now you want to hear them talk about it. Okay, all right, fine. But let them come out and get dressed and shower as men. and then come out and speak to us. I think it kind of degrades them a little bit when they're they got their drawers on and they're trying to have some sort of conversation about a game. I just let them be men. So like smaller things like that, things that I've never thought about when I was younger. Those are the things that I try to think about now in terms of just them being human beings.
But one may say that really and truly they're just paid employees in a big circle, really and truly. Like, I guess when you become a professional athlete, it's hard to keep your privacy, especially if you're one of the more prominent athletes in your sport or genre. Would you not agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm not in love with our culture's how enamored we are with entertainers in general and their personal lives. I don't need to know that they shop just like me. I don't need to know. It's fine. They're people. They have a job. They're going to do their job. They do it exceedingly well, and they are handsomely compensated for it. But at the end of the day, it's still a job, and the only reason they're so compensated for it is because that the economics of their sport dictates so. That doesn't mean that they should be more. That has very little to do with them as people. That really has to do more with us as a society. The fact that we have we hold them up on a pedestal and are willing to pay such exorbitant amounts of money, that's great. Okay, fantastic for them. Doesn't change them as people and a desire for their privacy. They're human beings just like anyone else.
I'm going to get back a little bit to the article. We've been discussing offshoots of the article, but there was a line in the article amongst many that I wanted you to comment on, and I'm going to quote you here. Quote, perhaps something will click with the consumers of the product that those that they cheer on Sunday share the same skin tone with those victimized by agents of the government, unquote. What did you mean by that line?
Well, one of the cool things about being an athlete or being a black athlete is that you're entertaining people that don't really look like you. They're sure there are black people in the audience, but the majority is who is in the audience. People in the audience, Hispanic people in the audience, people that don't necessarily look like you and don't necessarily understand your struggle. So you're giving an audience, you're giving a platform that you can't necessarily make any other way. You can't necessarily come out and have such a large audience in any other fashion without any sort of, well, these aren't Democrats, these aren't Republicans, these are just basketball fans, these are just football fans. And so that's kind of, it throws everybody into the mix. So you get the greatest cross section of America that you're going to get. So you get this platform. So maybe something will click with, you know what? All right, I don't necessarily agree with everything that went down with, you know, I support cops and their right to do their jobs. They're very, very important. But yes, they can be wrong too. They aren't infallible. They're human beings. So maybe I'll give a little bit more when I have this discussion with somebody at work. Maybe I'll just think about things in a little bit different way, because it's so very easy to sit up here and just yell at people like, this is the right way, this is how it should be. I don't know how effective that is. But if you know someone going through a struggle, or you feel a connection with someone who's gone through that struggle, and or you're a big LeBron fan, or you're a big player X fan, and player X telling you, hey man, this is tough for us. Like back then, both something with police, we have different interaction than other races. Yeah, maybe somebody can get on TV and yell that at you, but you don't have that same connection with this guy that you've been cheering on for years. Like maybe that kind of familiar feeling that you have with him, maybe that clicks with something in you, and maybe you just think about things a little bit differently. Because I think that's the biggest thing, just having people consider another point of view.
How much of a challenge do you feel the black athlete has these days in being an activist, though? Because again, it seems to be a very fine line that they're going to have to walk. Because you do mention in your article about, you know, they sign these contracts, they sign these endorsement deals, and it doesn't really sound like they're involved. They have the environment to be activists, those who want to be activists, because it sounds like it comes at a cost.
It does, but I don't know. I've always my brother went to Penn State for his postgraduate degree, and he was studying getting an MBA, and the professor said, you know, I'm really teaching for you guys. I mean, I've already made a ton of money. I'm really teaching for you guys. He said, you know what? I've got FU money, and which was translated loosely was forget you money. Like at any point, I don't want to do this. I don't have to do this anymore. And so that to me is what to me, if you're going to make all this money, then enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the freedom to say something that, you know what, yeah, people might not like, but you're not going to lose your job, and you're still going to have your money. Maybe you don't get that extra endorsement. Maybe Gillette doesn't sponsor you anymore, but you do have you're settled and wealthy enough so that you can have a voice. If I would hate to think that by making all this money, they've then bought your silence. That would hurt, and that would be disappointing on a very high level.
I think that's a very interesting piece of words you just said there, buying athletes silence. I think it's a terminology we'll have to continue to look at going on in the years when it comes to black athletes in sports. Do you not think?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But I really do. With this recent reaction, maybe this is optimism, which is something I've never been accused of having in abundance. But I think that the tide is turning on having athletes that are just, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out. Especially the advent of social media, that interaction between between athletes and the audience, that's an interesting nuance. That's a new thing, and that kind of it catches them when they're not on the court, when they're not on the field. It kind of catches them in regular life a little bit more often, and it can be good, it can be bad. We've seen the bad and we've seen the good, but I think that maybe that extra dimension will allow some of these athletes to feel more comfortable with expressing what they want to say without worrying about, well, the media is going to twist this around. Hey, you get to put out these 140 characters, or you get to put out this blog post, or you get to put out whatever you want to without anyone else editing. So maybe something good can come out of that.
If black athletes, in your opinion, should be activists, do you not think that they need to be able to relate better to the black community that are not athletes, who are their fans?
Sure, but I think in general, if I think that's a thing that they can't do. That now that's going to take them going of their own volition to make sure that they stay very informed about things, because that's the other thing. A lot of black athletes, or a lot of athletes in general, don't necessarily have a lot of formal education, and so if they're perform well enough, that they're going to have a big enough microphone in front of them, and they can say whatever they want to, which can be dangerous, because if you're not well enough informed, I think that you can sometimes come off sounding like a buffoon. So it's important that if you're going to take these stands, if you're going to get out in front of these microphones, or if you're going to tweet these things, or if you're going to wear these shirts, you absolutely have to be well informed and immersed in what you're talking about. You don't have to be the most articulate person. I think that sometimes we can parse words so much without context, and that's not really high level thinking. I think that as a society we can do better with that, but it's going to be on them in order to make that connection with people.
Right on. What has been the reaction to your article?
The people around me really like it. I mean, I'm not on a really large platform enough where I'm getting people who have nothing in common with me and things like that. I hope to one day be able to have these sorts of conversations and larger rooms. You know what I mean? Like with people that don't necessarily agree with me. I think that's kind of the only way you can change people's minds. Now that's also going to lead to a lot of conflict, but that's just kind of how it goes. I mean, I'm not trying to be adversarial by nature, but that's the only way that progress is going to happen, with people coming together and having completely different ideas, and there's not a winner or a loser. It's just change. It's a kind of an erosion sort of thing. Like over time, any structure can be changed. It's just going to take time, and hopefully I'll have that opportunity to speak with more and more people that don't agree with me. So.
Well, you know what? One of the things I always share with people, and when I was going to school, which was a little while ago, in my science class, there was always the phrase, motion causes friction. So whenever you make a movement, it's going to cause friction. Sometimes it's going to be good friction, you hope most of the time, and sometimes it's not going to be so good friction, but you got to do it. You got to do it.
Exactly.
But as we wind down here, what is Cat Cave all about?
Oh, Cat Crave is it's a Panthers website under the Fansided umbrella. I'm fortunate enough to be able to write with them, with Brian Palmise, my co-editor, and it's just a lot of fun, especially this season. The Panthers, there were two months without a win, and now in the next round of the playoffs. So I'm pretty excited. I'm not gonna lie to you. Saturday's a big game. Going to Seattle, get a chance to see Cam Newton do his thing.
You're going to Seattle.
No, I'm not going to see. I went to the Charlotte, the game in Charlotte, but no, Seattle. No, I can't quite swing that. I still gotta go to work. But I am very, very excited to see what happens, and I'm really I get it. It's nice to be able to be a fan and to write about it too, because I get to be completely biased and all that good stuff. But it's just me having a really good time with finding my voice in writing. So I'm really enjoying it.
Nice looking site, by the way. Very nice looking site.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And the content is strong also. It's not just the look. The content is key, and that's good stuff. So let's put you out on a limb. Who's going to win it
Okay.
all? Who's going to win it all? Who's going to be playing in the Super Bowl?
So, good gracious. I'm going to go with Baltimore. I'm going to go with Baltimore.
Ooh, upsetting Brady.
Yeah, there's something. I love Joe Flacco's temperament. He's very very even keeled. He's very, if you look at his numbers in the regular season, he's kind of like James Worthy. Look at his numbers in the regular season, it's pretty good. But when it comes big time, the lights shine. He's just very very comfortable. He's still Joe. So I like that about him. It concerns me a little bit that the Patriots can win in a myriad of ways. That's just they're chameleons, so that's a little scary. And I just don't trust Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning in the playoffs. So that's why I couldn't go with either one of those guys. In the NFC, man, it's hard for me to pick against Carolina because I feel like I've just been up and down with them so much.
Oh.
But I think Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Cam Newton is. As much as I love Cam Newton, I think Russell Wilson is, if not the second best quarterback in the league. And so I can't see anybody beating Seattle. But I'm rooting for Carolina. I'm going to go ahead. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and pick Carolina. That's what I'm about to do right now. I'm going ahead and pick Carolina to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. You put me on the spot, and that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. Do you think Peyton Manning is done?
It's so very difficult. I think he probably has another year. I think next year will be his final year.
Right.
It's weird seeing him not be able to make some throws because he's been one of the best quarterbacks for almost all of my life, all my adult life. He's been kind of the best quarterback.
Right.
And it's weird now to see him be unable to make the deep out throw. And now he's dealing with a thigh injury, so that's been part of his deterioration most recently has been with that. They got C.J. Anderson in the backfield who looks very very capable, looks like a very very capable runner, and who might be able to extend Manning's career a little bit longer. But as smart as he is, and Manning is, I don't know if there's ever been a smarter quarterback with a guy that does so much.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
But at some point, the mind is willing, but the body is not.
Right. Let me ask, who do you think is going to be winning the NCAA championship in football?
See, I was wrong about both games, by the way. Man, you're like everybody put me. Yeah, I was wrong about both these games, but both of the semifinals I got completely wrong. So I'm not even gonna sit up here in front like I had Ohio State and Oregon.
You actually thought Florida State was going to beat Oregon? Like, I wanted that in my heart, but I couldn't see it happening.
The reason I thought that is because I thought Jameis Winston, there isn't a quarterback that I would want more in a difficult spot than Jameis. Late in the game, one-score game, there's not another guy I'd want controlling my drive. He's a very cerebral quarterback. He's had his turnover issues, but whenever it came time to shine, he was very, very comfortable in that hot spotlight. I mean, as a freshman, as a redshirt freshman, came down and threw a completion to Kelvin Benjamin to win the national championships. I mean, that's something special. But they just gave up too many turnovers. I think they were top 5 in both turnovers and points allowed off turnovers. So eventually, it just kind of all unraveled on one crazy night. And Oregon is definitely not that team for you to be able to do that. That said, they did run up 500 yards against Oregon. Ohio State, unbelievably, with his third-string quarterback, Cardale Jones, he pressed the defense, and Oregon is missing his top quarterback. He had I think over completions or 20+ over yards. I think that Ohio State is going to do it, if not just because of Cardale Jones, but Ezekiel Elliott. I think it's going to be a real serious problem for them. And I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think Ohio State, especially with a coach that's been as many big spots as Urban Meyer, I think they pull it out late.
I'll just throw in myself. I don't think that Jameis lost the game for Florida State. I think everyone else on Florida State, with all the turnovers, that's what cost them the game. And not being able to kick that field goal near the end of the first half, I think that was critical. That was critical. Well, you know what? I think that we'll end it right there because I could ask you a myriad of questions, but it just gives us reason to have you back on the show to provide your takes on the world of sports because, You got a lot to share. You've made Super Bowl prediction. You made NCAA. Certainly down the road, we're gonna have to get you to talk about the March Madness that's coming up.
Oh, absolutely. I got to. I absolutely got to. Especially if I get these right. Oh, you just believe I'll be back.
Okay, my brother. Well, before we let you go, first of all, thanks for sharing with us on this show tonight. First of all, any final words you want to share about black athletes and activism in professional sports?
I just hope that they feel comfortable enough moving forward to express themselves. I know it can't. It's a very, very. I don't want it to ever come off as me being flippant, where I'm just, well, all you have to do is just go out there and say your piece. It's not very easy, especially when you're given a national platform to do so. I would just hope that they understand that, even if you're in the bins, you're still in the coop. To paraphrase Kanye, you're still black. There's never going to be a time where you stop being black, regardless of the success or the money or the accolades that you have. So I would hope that they immerse themselves in the literature and be kept abreast of events, and I would hope to hear more from the black athlete moving forward.
Words about Stuart Scott.
I was a huge fan of Stuart Scott. Just growing up, back in my day, they didn't have all these language centers. He was one of, they had a few that they would run, and then they would just run repeats. And growing up, I was a huge fan of sports, and it's kind of where I found, where I really learned early on, like simple percentages and ratios and fraction. Like that was kind of how I learned those things. So I kind of learned them at the knee of Stuart Scott, and the fact that he was so comfortable being himself. He changed the culture, not just the hip hop slang or whatever that he introduced into it. But SportsCenter used to be kind of stiff. It's been a while now because you get so many pop culture references and things like that. But SportsCenter was really kind of a deadpan. We're going to read these highlights, and we're really more just of a news station that happens to cover solely sports. And Stuart Scott really changed that. He made it more of a familial type of atmosphere that you're watching and you have a real connection with. So his impact was huge, and then you saw exactly how big it was with the outpouring of support. With if it were people that only knew him for a second, or him granting an interview, or some of the people that he mentored. When I woke up and I had heard the news, I was hurt for a couple reasons. I have family members that are cancer survivors, so I knew that struggle. I've been at the bedside of people, really, really hurt with that terrible disease. And so I was hurt that that this third bout of cancer that he had succumbed to it. But I was also hurt that just he was a legend. I mean, he was and I knew I realized that even growing up, even being younger, man, he's really doing his way. He's going out and being a trailblazer. And so to lose him, it was very, very sad. But it is interesting that a guy who wasn't that old, he wasn't even 50 years old, that he was a trailblazer. I think it's so easy as black people to think of pioneers as, in historical terms. We also lost Edward Brooke, Howard alum, first elected African-American U.S. Senator.
Yep.
I think it's so easy to think of him, of him as the kind of trailblazer, like, but these are still things that need to be done now. And we are still trailblazing. The young black people, everyone. These are still things that need to happen. And so when we lost him, we lost a true icon. So that was very, very sad.
If people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
The best way is you can just hit me up on Twitter, WBHU alum. That's WBHUALUM. There's links to all my stuff up there, be it podcasts or the blog or anything like that. Or you just want to chop up sports with me. That's completely fine. Like I'm a sports head, and so I know we were talking about some pretty serious topics as it pertains to kind of like satellite of the sporting world. But I'm still a sports nut at heart. So if you want hit me up and tell me that you still think Kobe Bryant's the best player in the world, hey man, so that's fine.
All right, my man. Well, Kobe is the most animated practice player in the world right now.
Yes.
And if And if people don't know what I'm talking about, just put Kobe Bryant practice on YouTube. That'll say it all.
That will say it all. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that.
There you go. Well, it's we thank Brendan for coming on the show tonight, and he is definitely coming back on the show. The mic is open whenever he wants, or we'll hunt him down in a good
Yes,
way.
sir.
Absolutely. So it's Dr. Vibe here. I'm your host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also host and co-producer of the Good Men Project show, which you can catch at thegoodmenproject.com, one of the most viewed sites in the world in regards to men's issues. And you can catch a number of my shows at thegoodmenproject.com. If you want to touch base with me, probably the best way is the drvibeshow.com, and we're going to keep Brendan's predictions up because by end of this month we'll know about the NFL, and by next week we'll know if Ohio State can back them up large. So as always, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and your solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace be well, and keep the faith. Bye bye.